Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. Bismillah walhamdulillah. Wassalatu wassalamu ala rasulillah wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa ala amma ba'd. A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim. Bismillah ar-Rahman rahim. So we are about to start our Muslim marriage marital discord series, and I'm so glad that we have today experts on marriage therapy. We have Sister Maliha and we have Sister Imani. And I just want to introduce them. Today, I'm not speaking. I'm actually moderating the session. I will going to ask questions to them. We already received 8 to 9 questions, and we will going to ask them to both our esteemed panelists. And if you want to ask any question before I can introduce these speakers, if you want to ask any questions, I would request you all to type in your Facebook or your YouTube comments. And if you want to stay anonymous, because this is a sensitive issue of marital discord, then you can text your questions on this number 774-314-2561. Again, 774-314-2561 for anonymous text. So I want to introduce first our first guest, Sister Imani. She is local to our community. We are fortunate to have her in our community. She is a marriage and family therapist. Just a little bit about Sister Imani's background. Sister Imani grew up in Chicago, Illinois, where she obtained a Master of Science in Marriage and Family Therapy from Northwestern University. She has been working as a therapist for the past 4 years and specializes in family issue and couple relationships. She has also spent several years working as a counselor and program director for Muslim Youth Camp in Chicago, where she gained insight into family issues that present in the Muslim community from the youth perspective. So extremely relevant for us. Sister Imani currently works at Counseling and Assessment Clinic of Worcester, where she treats adults, adolescents, and couples for a variety of mental health issues. So I would like to welcome Sister Imani and also Sister Maliha. Sister Maliha is a marriage and family therapist at Counseling and Psychotherapy of America. She graduated with her bachelor's in psychology from University of Connecticut and a master's in marital and family therapy from Central Connecticut State University. Sister Maliha has worked in the mental health field for over 10 years in various areas such as substance abuse, intimate partner violence, trauma-informed care for adolescents, and more. Sister Maliha currently lives in Connecticut with her family. And just FYI to the audience, both of their husbands, they are my close friends, alhamdulillah. So how are you doing, Sister Maliha and Sister Imani?
Good, alhamdulillah. Thank you for having us.
Alhamdulillah, yeah, thank you.
Oh, it's a pleasure. And by looking at your bio, inshallah, we can have one more session about mental health, another taboo topic in our community, which is extremely relevant nowadays. So before I can start, just let me tell you this, that how excited my wife is about this session, that in the entire Ramadan, I did so many programs so far, but she never waited for any program before the program started. But this program, she was anxiously waiting when this program will start. But anyway, so let's start with the by addressing the elephant in the room. I will start with Sister Maliha. So, Sister Maliha, for ever since this lockdown started, or social quarantine or social isolation started, any family-oriented man will find this time a perfect opportunity to spend with family. I can spend time with my wife and with my husband, with my kids. But subhanallah, the domestic violence cases are going up, and you can tell us with your experience why that is happening when it's a perfect opportunity for anyone to spend time with the family. Why the restriction?
Sure. So I believe, we're creatures of habit. So we're on a schedule Monday through Friday. We have our weekends, that's usually the time that we take out for our families because we're so busy working, taking care of households, taking care of our basic needs. And now, because of the social distancing or, being home, due to working from home or whether it's just being on this lockdown that we've been on, we're finding ourselves being confined in a small space. Even though, mashallah, most of us have good homes, we have a lot of space to ourselves, we have a room that we can say it's ours, an office space. We're still feeling ourselves being confined to those four walls of our home and not having the opportunity to go out and really, get back to our daily routine that we were so used to. So that's I feel that's really the number one cause. We're in each other's way a lot more. And like you said, this is the perfect time to be spending with your family. This is really the perfect time to take, the opportunity to teach your children something new, to spend more of that quality family time that we're all eager to do, on the weekends or when we have like that little vacation available to do so. However, because we have so much time and a lot more to do, we're finding that we're starting to get in everyone's way, within the household. And you can see that not only between the adults in the family, but you'll also find this happening within the children. They're asking for their
Mm.
space, they're asking to have their routine back. As parents, we've become teachers. We're teaching our kids on their daily homework, assignments that are being provided from school. We're becoming their, social partners. So now we're also becoming their friends. We have to be there to entertain them. We're also doing the same for our partners, our spouses. We have to be their provider, not only as like a home provider, but also their spiritual provider, their friendship, their friend, their educator in terms of like getting around the house, getting things done on time. So we're finding that we're taking on so many roles that it's now starting to get in our way, and it's starting to overwhelm us
Mhm.
as individuals. What we did minimally throughout the week and throughout the 7 days that we had, we now have to do each day, every day on a routine, on like on a daily basis. So that's kind of what's causing people to get into these marital discords, because now we're having more arguments, and the arguments aren't necessarily about things that are valid, in the sense that they could be about taking out the garbage on time, or putting the kids to bed, or giving them a bath, or it could just be, for couples who don't have, families yet, they're talking more about, why are you just sitting on the couch all day? Why are you watching Netflix for 6 hours? You know, just minimizing everything that's really going through our heads on a daily basis. Each of us is suffering some form of trauma from this situation, and some sort of loss. And we're each grieving in our own ways. And while our partner may not understand the way that we grieve and the way that we are experiencing this trauma, we're only looking at the negative side, and we're really just calling out our partners and calling out on our kids and saying negative things to them, because we ourselves are in a negative space, in our negative headspace. So it's really important for us to focus on like, what are some ways for us to get out of that negative space and really make the most of this time that we have. A lot of the times when partners get in each other's way, or they're around each other more, they find out little things about them that they would normally ignore or overlook, and now those little things are becoming these big issues, and that's where these fights are starting from. Again, why did you leave the cup on the table? Why did you leave the coaster? These are things that were done normally, but now because we're in kind of like this laid back mode, we're not really focusing more on that. So that's one of the biggest reasons why we're really seeing a lot more issues in couples right now, because they're starting little arguments, and the arguments are really not based on anything big, but they're creating these big issues between couples.
Oh, beautiful answer, Sister Malia. Thanks for your insight. Sister Imani, do you want to add anything? And also, just on the other side of the aisle, that what's the appropriate solution for if someone is having or going through this kind of marriage or domestic violence? Yeah.
So I definitely agree with everything that Sister Malia said. I think in addition to couples just spending maybe too much time together, there's also this sense of fear and powerlessness that we're all going through. Some of us have lost our jobs, some of us are experiencing financial instability. We may have had a lot of things that we had planned that now have to be put on hold, and so there's a lot of fear and anxiety that we're all also carrying, and that fear and anxiety can stay inside only so long. It has to come out in some way, and for some people it comes out in a way that might harm other people. And so I think that there's two different sides. One of them is just maintaining safety, and the other side is just how to deal with kind of everyday anger. When it comes to safety, there are phone numbers and there are websites and there are places that are still functioning during this time. And so there is a phone number that if you're in a situation where you feel like you need some kind of assistance, it's 1-800-799-7233. And then there's also janedoe.org, JANEDOE.org. both of these, they're the people who run these organizations are active. They're working during this pandemic, and they're still there to help. And I believe there's also they also offer services in different languages if you don't speak English. But if you're not at that point and it's sort of like, what do I do? I'm here in the situation. I don't even know, I feel like I don't have any support. Reaching out to family members, you can't necessarily see them in person, but finding the one family member or friend that has your safety in mind and can be there to support you, reaching out to them and getting some support from them, creating a safety plan with them. If I start to worry about the safety of myself or my kids, can we come up with a plan together just so I don't feel so alone in this?
Yeah.
When it comes to just regular everyday anger, that is going to be more heightened during this time because of all the reasons that have already been mentioned. And so a few things. One is to make sure that you're taking care of yourself. If you're someone who's experiencing more anger right now, make sure you're doing things to release that anger, because if you don't do things actively to release it, it's going to come out in unexpected ways. So that might be taking walks, that might be journaling, that might be talking to someone. So doing these different things. And if you're a spouse and you notice that your spouse is carrying more anger than usual, you can talk to them about, hey, I know you used to go to the gym all the time. We can't do that, but how about we create the space at home for you to work out, or you can take a run outside. Notice the things that each other hasn't been able to do and find ways to be able to do that in this new normal that we're living in. And then the last thing I wanted to say is just in relationships, we all have a line. I have a line that I don't want you to cross. You have a line that you don't want me to cross. And if you notice your spouse crossing that line, it's important for them to know that, that and finding a moment where things are calm, you're not in the middle of an argument, and say, this thing that happened earlier, I understand that you're mad. I understand that things are hard, but that wasn't okay. Can I help you find another way to deal with what you're dealing with? And again, if you don't feel safe to have that conversation, if you feel like you might be in danger by having that conversation, then reaching out to outside resources that can help you, because there are still people there who are willing to help. If you're a family member and you know someone who might be in this situation, definitely reach out and offer your support so that they don't feel so alone during this time.
Awesome, mashallah, a beautiful insight. You spoke about seeking help. So before I can move to the next questions, which I have received a bunch of them, both of you. Now my question is that usually it's considered as taboo in Muslim community. They would love to come to imam, even though imam is not qualified in or licensed therapist. He can only tell you about the religious side of it, when divorce happened, when nikah happened, and so on and so forth, or maybe tell you from the Quran and Hadith, just inspirational guidance. But obviously, you need to seek help. You need to go to therapists like yourself. So, can you tell Muslim community that when you have issue, early intervention, how does it help? When whatever issues they are, to seek help properly, to go to therapists instead of just relying on that one uncle and auntie who's very popular in the family regarding marriage. So can you shed some light on this? Start, Sister Mali. I'll start from you.
Sure. So mental health is just like your medical health. If you start to notice that there's a decline in your physical, health, you go to seek a doctor right away. If you start feeling overly tired, if you have gained more weight than you should have, you consult with your physician right away, right? Because you want to make sure that you're doing okay, or has there been a change in your body, or is there something going on with you that you aren't able to see? It's the same, it's same thing as mental health. As soon as you feel a decline in your mental status, whether it's that that you're a happy, outgoing person, you're someone who's, excited about life, who's interested in their hobbies, all of a sudden you see a decline in this, part of your life, where you see that, you're no longer wanting to get out of bed, you're no longer wanting to spend time with your loved ones or with your family, then that is a cue for you to seek out help right away. Talk to a therapist, call, and see who's available in your area to speak with you in regards to what it is that you're experiencing. A lot of the time, especially with the Muslim community, we say, let me go talk to an imam when I'm having an issue with my wife or with my husband or whatnot. And it's not a bad idea. However, like, Imam Asif just said, they're not licensed clinicians. They don't have a mental health background. So they might not be able to evaluate you for things that, you might be experiencing. They might be able to give you a more general idea of what it is that you're going through. But in order to get a full physical, you wouldn't go to your imam and say, Imam, I'm stomach pain. What should I take? You call your doctor and you say, I'm experiencing discomfort. What do I do next? Same concept. You call a mental health provider and you seek them out. And imam, in my opinion, I'm married to one, so I get these questions all the time and I hear the stories all the time. To me, is a really good friend with a lot of great knowledge. It's someone who can really talk to you about what it is that you're experiencing, how Allah may perceive it, or how like it's been written in the Quran and what like the hadiths are, which is amazing because you may not get that from your doctor. But an imam may not be able to tell you, you might be experiencing depression, or what you're experiencing is anxiety. What you may be experiencing is some form of trauma that you kind of suppressed through your childhood, or anything of that sort. Or it could just be, there's been a change in my mood. What's going on with me? Let me talk about this. Let me process this out with you. So, I would love to see our imams be trained in like asking those type of questions where they're able to like, evaluate what it is that's going on and refer you right out to a therapist in the area. However, we're still in like the works for that in a lot of communities.
Yeah.
These things are still happening. They're not quite there yet. So I would definitely recommend that, reach out. As soon as you feel a decline in your mood, as soon as you feel like something's changed, reach out to a therapist because early intervention makes a huge difference. I think another, taboo that we have that I think most general population has with therapists is that as soon as I see one, I'm going to be prescribed like 40 medications for mental health. That's not the truth. That is, if you seek out a counselor, if you seek out a therapist, they'll evaluate you from, top to bottom to make sure what it is that's going on. And based on their evaluation, they may refer you out if they feel it's necessary. However, it's not necessary in every case. Talk therapy goes a long way for people. Talk therapy is very helpful. It really, helps you gain insight into who you are as an individual. And that's really the goal of therapy. And that's, that's what you get from that early intervention before things get too far and too bad.
That's awesome, mashallah, Sister Maliha. Sister Imani, do you want to add anything? And also, if you can add on with this aspect that, especially in, let's say, in some of the Muslim cultures, they would think if you will go to a therapist or counselors for this kind of session, then people will consider you are a crazy person, pagal, and how to refute that. Just like Sister Maliha pointed out, that you have to go to a physician for your physical exam. This obviously is as important as your physical health, your mental health. So can you shed some light, Sister Imani?
Definitely. I agree with everything that was said before. Something that I found when I work with couples and talking to colleagues, that often couples will come to therapy when, like she said, things have gotten very bad. And the question that we're thinking in our mind is, why didn't you come 10 years ago? Why didn't you come 6 months ago? Because the things that you're working through can be much easier to talk about in therapy when you come a little bit earlier, when you still feel positively towards the other person. If you wait until you hate each other, it's very hard to get work done, but you can still get work done. That's why we're both therapists, is because we believe that change can happen. I think that it's very normal to be uncomfortable with it because, there might be a stigma against it. You might be thinking, if I'm going to therapy, this just means I'm going to get a divorce later, or that, is my problem bad enough for me to go to therapy? These are all things that definitely Muslims experience, but also non-Muslims experience. And it's very normal to have that discomfort. But like was said before, if you have a physical discomfort, you would do something to take care of it. And so it's so important to seek out a therapist who has the training. I've had colleagues who are not marriage and family therapists, but do other forms of therapy say that, there's certain things that you as marriage and family therapists have to do that are very difficult for us because we haven't gotten that training. And think about an imam who hasn't gotten, any of the therapy training possibly. He can help you in a lot of ways. But there are certain things within a marriage that it takes a therapist to help. And if you're going to a family member, there's a risk of them telling other people what's going on. There's a risk of them, do you want them to think negatively about your spouse if you're complaining about your spouse to them? There's a lot of things that when you're talking to a therapist who's not in the situation, who can just sit and listen and validate you and offer possible solutions, it's much more comfortable to be able to fully talk about the issues that are really going on, because you might feel uncomfortable saying really how bad it is when you're talking to someone who you know or who's in your community.
Oh, mashallah, awesome answers, mashallah. Now I'll actually move on to the questions. I'll actually start with Sister Imani. So Sister Imani, the question is that we have no time alone because our young kids are home all day and require our attention. So we take turns watching the kids while the other works, and we never get to see each other. So how can we make time for each other?
Very, very relevant during this time, especially with kids not being in school. I know that it's really difficult and a very normal problem for a couple to have. I think my first piece of advice would be, if both of you are working, or even if one of you is working, to make sure you're having regular work hours, which can be very difficult. But like everyone, even before this pandemic happened, everyone I know who talks about working at home says that it's very hard to have boundaries.
Sister Imani, it's impossible for Imam to have these regular work hours, just FYI.
So if you normally have regular work hours in your job, try to mimic that at home. And giving or when you're not working, to make sure you're really focusing on your family and your spouse, because even those of us who have jobs that don't necessarily have work hours, when we're not working, sometimes work is still on our mind and we're not able to pay attention to the other person, and we're only really giving 50-25% of ourselves to the other person because the other 50% is still at work. And so making sure you have those boundaries around your time. I think trying to have some structure with the routine of your kids. If they're still receiving schoolwork, you can say, okay, you're going to school right now, I'm going to work right now. We're doing it all in the same house, but we're doing it at this time. And it gives them an expectation that, while I'm doing this work, there's certain times that my mom and dad aren't just available to play. They're doing work. And so if you're showing them regularly that I'm working during this time, then they'll eventually know that. And then when it comes to interacting with each other as a couple, it is very, very hard, but finding that time after the kids go to sleep, it's normal as parents to immediately just want to hit the pillow yourself, but trying to take, just 20 minutes, we're finally here, just the two of us. Let's just sit and just be in each other's company. Let's just talk. And when you're in that position, maybe try not to talk about the kids and just talk about each other. How was your day? It's a very, very common thing. And just like, people who are working can't get away from work when they're at home. If you're working with the kids all day, your brain needs a break from thinking about parenting. And so those are a few things. I think another thing that happens sometimes is childcare can sometimes be used as avoidance for talking about things with your spouse. That, I know we have this thing to talk about, but I have to do this laundry for the kid right now, or I have to go feed them, or I have to do this. When really there might be some times where the kids really will be okay if you take some time apart. And so notice when you're doing that, when you're avoiding talking to your spouse, because that might be a sign that there is actually something you really do need to talk about together.
Yeah. No, beautiful, beautiful explanation. Sister Malia, before I can ask you the next question, do you want to add anything? Is there anything you want to add on this?
Nope, I think it was explained perfectly.
Actually, let me ask you one dynamic of this question before I can ask you a new question. Okay. A few days ago, I received in Ramadan, because it was under the same line. So I thought I will ask you this question. After Salatul Asr, all of us become hungry, and hungers bring frustration sometimes. So that created friction because they are in lockdown, social isolation that was already enough. And now in Ramadan, hunger, frustration, desperation. How to control that? I know from the religious perspective, but from the psychological perspective, what would you advise to that couple in spending time together in a peaceful way, loving way in the Ramadan, while fasting, while praying Taraweeh? How would you advise them?
I would say, find a religious activity that the couple enjoys doing together and try to do it during that time period to keep yourself busy. Whether it's like, reading Quran or checking each other's Quran, or whether it's like, watching a favorite, speaker or scholar, like give a talk, schedule that time in and make sure it's marked down that after usher, this is what we'll do together. And even, if you have children and you want to include your children in that practice, it's great because then they get used to that scheduled activity with you as a family. I get a lot of questions about couples who want to do things together in terms of religious activities, but can never agree on the one thing that they want to do because they might be interested in different scholars or they might be interested in different topics. So I always tell them, find a middle point, find something that neither one of you have learned about before or have much knowledge about, and learn that together. Because when you learn something together as a couple, it brings more meaning to it because you're actually, you're not only building on your iman, but you're also building on your relationship, which is part of your deen, So by doing an activity that in which you're, in which you're like remembering Allah, in which you're remembering the word of Allah, you're building like this beautiful relationship between the two of you, and you're both gaining something out of it, and your relationship is gaining that the soul that it needs in order to keep going, in order to keep moving forward. So always if you're finding yourself having that time where you need something to do, find something new that the two of you would want to learn together and spend that time during the day to do that.
That's awesome. Okay, so Sister Malia, again, one question is that a sister is asking, my husband is an essential worker and has to go to work every day, and my anxiety is always at a high because I'm worried he will contact and carry the virus and bring it to home into the family. What can I do to manage my anxiety through this pandemic so that it will not cause issues in my marriage?
One of the things that I learned about myself personally was that I don't like germs. I thought I was okay with just being like that mom or that, person who's like, oh, this is building your immunity. Now, being married to someone who is mostly out of the house during the day in order to go to the masjid, in order to if someone's coming in with a question or if there's a problem, I'm like Lysoling my house like every 10 minutes. And, so I had to actually work on this myself and say, inshallah, it'll be okay. It's Allah's will. This pandemic is Allah's will, and this is more from like a religious perspective, but you can also add it to allow yourself to calm your anxiety and to help yourself get back to your baseline of feeling more at ease because, you have to do your part, which is cleaning the house, making sure that the person who's going out, when they return home, they, wash their clothes, they wash their hands, they don't touch the children or anything in the house. You can do those steps by just kind of leaving a poster at the door, this is expected of you, or don't come in the house, wash your hands immediately, take off your shoes outside, clean the surfaces that you've touched, and that's it. At the end of the day, that's the best that we can do. I've seen videos about parents not being able to hug their children because they're physicians or nurses. And that breaks my heart because I'm sure that the anxiety that they're experiencing because they don't want their loved ones to contract this is immense right now. It's off the charts. But you can love your children. You can give them that attention that you need. You just need to be cautious of how you do it, Don't hug them in the same clothes that you're wearing when you're outside. As soon as you come home, make sure you change your clothes right away. If you have access to a bathroom, wash your hands, change your clothes, take off your shoes, all of that. Then go and greet your kids. And this is a routine that we can build until we've come to a point where it becomes second nature to us. And after that, you've done what you can. And, you have to allow yourself to remind yourself that, inshallah, it'll be okay, and that you're going to be okay. Taking, those deep breaths, when your husband or your spouse walks in the door and they're an essential worker, instead of yelling at them and saying, hey, take off your shoes, or hey, don't touch anything. Have something posted right by your door so it's an eyesight of your spouse to see, that this is what I need to do. And after that, there's not much that we can do to prevent this, unfortunately. I've heard about friends spending, being moved to a hotel because their spouse is like, you're not coming home. I'm not dealing with this. I'd rather you stay in the hotel and go to work from there than to come home. But that's a long time to be away from your partner,
Yeah.
to be away from your family. So in order to alleviate some of that stress and that anxiety, you just need to come up with a plan that works best for you. And at the end of the day, we have to accept that whatever is going to happen, it's up to Allah. And inshallah khair, everyone stays safe, everyone's healthy and nobody gets sick and we're good. But we just have to remind ourselves that if we overthink things, then they only become worse. They don't become better. So, as we have to stay calm, we have to make a plan and execute that plan. And then, after that, you've done what you can. So just keep reminding yourself of that and allowing yourself to believe in that and to follow through with those steps.
Awesome, mashallah, Sister Malia. That's an amazing answer. Actually, Lysol in every 10 minutes, isn't that too much?
It is. And I really had to check myself too because I was like, what am I doing? I'm the only one home with my kids.
I know one therapist in Connecticut. If you have an OCD issue, I can send you to her.
That would be great. And because I had to check myself and I was like, what am I doing? I'm home by myself. I'm not going anywhere. Germs are my prevention here. And then after that, I was like, I'm locking away my Lysol, I'm locking away my wipes, and we're good. Inshallah, it'll be okay.
No, inshallah. Jazakumullah khairan to both of you. So now, Sister Imani, next question. Actually, now, because we have many questions, I would request you speakers, because you have to finish at 6, to take less than 3 minutes to answer the questions, inshallah. Sister Imani, we are arguing, the question is, we are arguing more than ever. Small issues, they lead to huge issues and huge arguments. Why is this happening? How do we fix these issues? Can you throw some light on this?
Mm-hmm. So there are a lot of reasons why this may be happening, but one, you're spending, like we've said before, you're spending a lot of time together and you're going to bump heads at some point. I think something that may be happening is if it feels like these arguments are happening out of nowhere, I don't know why we're arguing about this, or I don't know why my husband just got really mad at me for something so little, or my wife just got really mad at me. There may be some underlying thing. There may be some issue that the two of you had that goes even before the pandemic that just was never addressed. And if something is bothering you or you're concerned about something in your marriage and you've never expressed that and you've never talked about it and you're just harboring these negative feelings, then we've all experienced this. Every single thing the person does is then going to annoy you if you never get that feeling addressed. And so I think just increased communication and not yelling more, saying you're doing this, this, and this, but saying, I'm feeling this, or this thing is bothering me and we haven't talked about it. Can we just take some time to talk about it? Because I feel like I'm not able to get it off my mind, or it's affecting how I talk to you. And making it really about you, I need to be able to talk to you about this, or else I'm not going to be okay, or I'm gonna be more irritable than usual. And then making sure that you're listening well, when your spouse is talking to you about something that's bothering them, rather than just responding with your side once they're done, really taking time to listen and say, okay, I understand, and saying it out loud, I understand why you're feeling this way because of this, this, and this. I see that. Now, let me offer you another position, or how can I help you with that, knowing that I'm dealing with these things? And really working as a team together rather than seeing each other as enemies and taking your stress that we're all under out on each other.
No, that's awesome. That's awesome. Actually, awesome way you concluded that working as a team instead of competing with each other, complete each other. Beautiful. So now, Sister Maliha, the next question is: my husband and I are comparing and contrasting whose work is more important and demanding. What can we do to avoid this back and forth and come to an understanding of the importance of both of our work?
Sure. So I'm going to take away from what Sister Imani just shared about, working as a team rather than competing with one another. When you start comparing and contrasting, you're at a tug of war. So you're now saying, I'm better, no, I'm better. And that just creates more friction and more issues within the couple. So it's better to work as a team and say, okay, I understand that you have to work from 8 to 4. I need to work from 3 to 5. How can we make this work? Where we can both have some private space to do our work. Working together, coming up with a plan is the way to go. We're going to be in this for a while. It's not going to, and even if we're not in the pandemic, we're still seeing these issues come up because we're seeing that couples, often argue about how do I whose work is more important. So we have to understand that when both spouses are working in the household, you're both working towards the same goal, which is to make sure that everyone's taken care of, everyone's provided for. So working as a team is really important, and allowing yourself to remember that each time that you do will go a long way. So, plan ahead, talk to each other, ask, sit down and say, hey, do you have any important meetings going on during this time during the day? Or on Thursday, I have to be in a conference call from 9 to 5. How can we make sure that your work is taken care of during that time, as well as whatever else needs to get done for that day? So coming up with a schedule, coming up with a plan, working together with one another goes a long way. And then you no longer feel like you're doing that tug of war, because you're now both on the same team and you're working together with each other rather than working against each other.
Yeah. Oh, Jazakallah khairan, Sister Maliha. That's a beautiful response, mashallah. Sister Imani, the next question is that the questioner is asking, my wife keeps nagging and trying to control me, and with the quarantine, I have no chance to get away from her. What can I do? So this is not my question. This is the questioner asking your question. Yes.
Of course. I think that a couple of things. One, that you have to balance your couple time and your alone time. And so because we're spending so much time with each other, you have to be able to get that time alone. And no, you can't go out and see your friends. You can't go to the masjid. There's a lot of things that we can't do, but there are also a lot of things we can do. Alhamdulillah, we live in a country where we are still able to walk around outside and go for a drive. And so if you need to do that, go and do that. And, don't just leave without telling the other person, but communicating, I need some time by myself. Can we both take this time, because you both need it? On the other hand, there might be some couples that they might be spending a lot of time together, but they're not actually talking to each other, or they're sitting next to each other, but they're on their phones all day. And those are the couples that need to start really actively taking time to talk to each other. If the only time you spend with each other are when you're watching something, there's not a lot of talking in there. And so your wife nagging you might just be, I never get a chance to actually say anything to you, and I feel like the only way I can is in these little spurts where I say everything at once. And so really taking the time to sit and talk about the things that's going on, and think about, your wife, all the things your wife is telling you. What is she trying to communicate with you? Is it that she needs help, that it feels like the work between the two of you is imbalanced, like we talked about before? You're doing this, this, and this, she's doing this, 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 and this. If that's the case, talk about, okay, I know that you're under a lot of stress. How can I help you? How can I ease some of your load? Another side to that might just be, I need to give you a break. I know that you're going through a lot of different things right now. Let me take care of the kids. Let me watch the pot. You go and do what you need to do to take some time, because I think both of you need that time. And sometimes people don't know how to ask in an open way if I need time to myself, and it comes out in these other different ways. And so to notice, how much time you're giving for your wife, and also how much time you're taking for yourself.
Oh, amazing response, mashallah. The phone thing you mentioned, actually, it's really a problem, subhanallah. I have received so many complaints. How can we make a schedule so that we can use these gadgets efficiently? Is there any recommendation from your experience? But you have to keep this in mind now. In lockdown, we are more prone to use actually our cell phone and our gadget for the work related purpose. So what can we do in that stage?
I think it depends on the age. Like for teenagers and adults are two different things. We do need our technology for work. I also will say that a lot of us do need our technology for socializing during this time, because we're not getting that in person. I know a lot of parents see their kids on their phones all day and think, oh, they're just wasting their time. But for a lot of kids, that is their only means of socializing with their friends. And so that is something to keep in mind. And it's just making sure things aren't happening in extremes. And so, if you feel like if your spouse is on their phone or on the TV or on the video game all day, saying, at the end of the day, I don't really get any time to talk to you. I don't really get any time to spend time with you. And now that we have all of this time during the month of Ramadan, where it's all about self-growth, let's try to do something together. And yeah, I think just making sure it's not in extremes, and that you're communicating about, if you notice something's missing, how can we bring this into the schedule, rather than just saying no TV, no phone after this time.
Okay, Jazakallah khairan. This really helps. Sister Maliha, as a parent, so someone is asking, as a parent, I don't feel like I'm living up to my standard of a good parent, as I'm not able to homeschool my child because of my work schedule. How can I feel good about being a parent during this time?
I would say that all parents, every parent right now, considering the amount of work that they've had to do in the last month, parents have been, not everyone's, you're not a teacher. You have to remind yourself of that. You're a teacher in the sense that you're a parent and you're a guide for your children, but you're not an educator in the sense that you're going to do the algebra homework, or you're going to do some stats, or you're going to do their biology homework, or even for little kids, like doing their pre-K or kindergarten homework with them. And, I think teachers, themselves have become more lenient on that because they understand that parents are still working from home. Their schedules are not as consistent in terms of, being able to give that one-on-one attention to their kids. So it's okay. You're doing a great job by just being present for your kid throughout the day. If you are able to give your child at least 20 minutes of attention like every hour, that's amazing. And that 20 minutes or that 10 minutes that you're giving them is not in the sense that you're sitting down doing something with them or just giving them 100% of your time, but rather just acknowledging that they're in your presence, saying, hey, how's your day going, kiddo? What have you been up to? That's more than enough. Oh, you drew this? That looks great. Can you draw me another picture of X, Y, and Z? Or, oh, you're talking to your friends. What are your friends up to right now? What are they doing, during this time? Things like that. Just check-ins with your kid. That's more than enough because that's, they're also seeking attention because they are used to having that attention in school from their friends and from their teachers. So if you cannot, find the time to work with your kid on Monday through Friday, don't worry. Try to catch up on the weekends if you can. Spend that 1 hour, 2 hours catching them up on their activities that are on their, web platforms and things like that. Get it done. Don't worry that you're not like, parent of the year, because you are the parent of the year because you're there. You're providing, you're taking care of them, you're acknowledging them, you're checking in with them. You are their parent and you're doing the best that you can in this, situation. So don't, put yourself down because that's not going to help you in any way, but rather lift yourself up and say, tomorrow I'm going to try to do something new with them. And that's the best that you can do.
No, Jazakallah khairan, Sister Madiha, for the beautiful answer. Sister Imani, the next question is, how can I take this time to strengthen my relationship with my husband and my kids? They are on video games and technology all day, and I feel like they have no interest in doing this. So can you shed some light on this?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, it is very difficult. I think part of what I said before about the technology applies here. I think it's just having conversation, and I know through the work I do with families, interrupting them in the middle of the video they're watching, or in the middle of the video game that they're playing, is not necessarily the way to go. Like, I want you to stop right now and talk to me. Probably isn't going to work. You're not going to get a very positive conversation from that. So noticing the breaks. I mean, watch their game with them, show interest. That's a way for you to spend time with them. Like, oh, you're really good at this character. And also once you know the game, you'll know the pause points in the game, and you'll know when you can sort of pause them and say, okay, you just finished that scene. Can you come and help me with this for a little bit? Or, once you're done with this part of the game, can you come and help me with that? Or once you're done with your video, can we talk about this? And in terms of making a plan, these things don't just come organically. These bonding with each other doesn't just come out of nowhere. A lot of times it does take active planning and conversation. And so, when it's the end of the day and you're reflecting on your day, turning to your spouse and saying, I feel like we've really been blessed given this time that we have to spend together, especially during the month of Ramadan. The last 10 days are coming up. How can we really make use of this time together and actively set goals together?
That's awesome. Jazakumullah khairan to both of you. And now I will going to take questions from the audience. Also, one question came. That's a big question. I will read it, and then Sister Mali and Sister Imani, both of you can shed some light on it. So the question says, I would really appreciate if you could get my two questions answered in the lecture. First, in my 10 years of marriage, my mother-in-law has always created fuss between me and my husband. She never had good terms with my parents and had put hatred towards my parents in my husband's heart too. She has always hurt me and my parents verbally. Few months ago, I had 8-week miscarriage, and my parents, for the first time, spoke up in these 10 years of my marriage against my mother-in-law for being responsible. But saying sorry to mother-in-law or talking over in another battle is another battle too. Out of all the anger, hurt we had in our heart, it couldn't stay in when I had the miscarriage. I have asked to forgive us, but still, just have a fear that Allah might not have liked the accusation which my parents put on her, and and I and my parents will not be forgiven. We are afraid from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for saying and putting such an accusation on her. Please let me know if I and my parents have wronged by saying this. This is the first question. Second question is, my husband supports his parents paying their house mortgage, but doesn't support his own house, like supporting the wife and the kids for bills and taxes. Although my father-in-law is healthy and earns good enough, so I always ask my parents to help me pay bills, taxes since many years. Please rule out the rights of a husband towards his wife and children and a right towards his parents. Before Sister Malia, you can respond. I would like to ask dua for this family, and I'd like to ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to give this family and this sister a beautiful progeny, inshallah, a beautiful substitute, what Allah have taken from them. Okay, Sister Malia.
Okay, so to answer the first question in regards to the words spoken towards the in-laws, I think it's important to know that sometimes, when we feel so much pain, we say things out of that pain. And that pain, and Allah knows what pain we're experiencing.
Yeah.
So, so when when you say something, even though you may not have meant it, or if you did mean it, or you meant it, but you want to take it back, it's already been said. The best that you can do now is to move forward from that. Talk to your mother-in-law and apologize for what has been said. Explain to her that this is the pain that I felt when I said it. And I feel more pain saying, knowing that I've said this to you, and, having this now being out in the open. So because I feel the way I feel, I want to apologize sincerely from my heart, to you for saying what I did. But I also want us to work on what's going on between us, which is sometimes really hard to do. It's really hard to want to acknowledge our own wrongdoing. And it's hard to even go out and apologize to someone when we still feel a certain type of way towards them. So you have to really humble yourself inside, and you have to ask yourself, am I ready to do this? Am I ready to take this step? And if you are ready to take it, which it kind of sounds like you are, then go for it. Prepare yourself, because things are going to be said to you that you will not be happy with. Things will be said to you that you may not expect, and you have to be ready to accept those things. But you also have to ask yourself, am I ready to mend this relationship? Because there's obviously something going on between me and her, or something that she's experienced in her life that she's still kind of taking out on me. So now let's talk about it, bring those out in the open, and let's try to make sure that we can work these issues out between this family, because we don't want things to continue the way they have been continuing for the last 10 years. And we want to make sure that we can build a healthy relationship. So try doing that, seeing if it works. And if not, seek someone else out who can be that third party mediator in your life, who can really guide the two of you, you being the individual and then your mother-in-law, through this process and understanding of each other, and really seeing what it is that's going on that's causing all of this pain in this family.
Jazakallah khairan, Sister Maria. Sister Imani, also Sister Imani, if you can add, is it really easy for the mother-in-law to change because of her old age, and what are the techniques you therapists use to advise some of the older folks? Because I personally find it, because I'm not a therapist, but I really find it difficult to talk to an older folk in the community to change some of his actions. So what she have to do? Yes, Sister Imani.
Yeah, I think that this is a very, very normal part of marriage, and I know it's one of the very, very common things that husbands and wives can have disagreements about is relationship with in-laws. And I think this goes for anyone, that when you're speaking to someone, it depends on how you approach them. If you're approaching them with, these are the problems I have with you and these are the things that I need for you to change, that won't go well with almost anyone. That won't go over well. And so a better way to approach it is from emotion. These are the things that I feel when I'm with you, and I want to have a good relationship with you. How can we mend this? What can we do? Or, if there's a lot, if there's anger in your mother-in-law, saying that I know that there's anger in you, because it seems like that's where some of these comments come from. What can I do to help ease your anger? What can I do as your daughter-in-law, or your son-in-law? What can I do to help mend this relationship and to help you? I think that is coming from a place of humility, and I'm not trying to put the change on you. I'm here as a family member wanting to help you and me build our relationship with each other. Will go over much better than attacking or criticizing back, even though we want to. And I wanted to just quickly say, with the apology, I think sometimes for people it's difficult to apologize if they still feel pain from the other person, and that apologizing doesn't have to erase the pain you feel. It's just mending the pain that you might have caused to soften the relationship between the two of you. You don't have to sacrifice your own pain for someone else. You're both feeling pain.
Yeah, no, beautiful response. I will actually add from a religious perspective on the second question, where she's asking that my husband is supporting his parents in paying the mortgage and building builds in Texas, but he didn't support his own family. So just for that, that you need to know that or it's a husband responsibility to support, provide boarding, clothing, lodging, everything for wife and for kids. If he have an extra money, he can, obviously it's his responsibility, provided on circumstances, to support his parents also, but not at the expense of ignoring his own family. So this is something which all the brothers who are married or who are planning to get married, they need to remember what are their responsibilities. So we are about to conclude. We are just 2-3 minutes away. Sister Malia and Sister Imani, just last message, Joe, how we can make this opportunity where we are living in lockdown as one of the best moments of our life, especially in marital life. How can we catch this or utilize this time? Let's start with Sister Imani, because I'm coming to Sister Malia first every time. So Sister Imani and then Sister Malia, and then we conclude, inshallah.
Yeah, no, I think that you can see this time as so many different ways. You can see it as a time of great hardship. You can also see it as a blessing and an opportunity to be able to, one, grow a connection to Allah. I know I personally have seen this whole time as just a demonstration of His power, and how small I am, and how much this is really about us worshiping Him and trusting in Him. And so it's a great time to build that relationship, and you can do that as a family. You can together reading Quran together, or creating goals for the rest of Ramadan together, or the rest of the quarantine together. That I think we've been given the opportunity of time, and granted, some of us are not home all day, some of us are essential workers, some of us are busy because our jobs didn't stop because of this, but a lot of distractions have gone away. We're not going to parties anymore. We're not going on random outings anymore. We're not going shopping as much. And so we are given some time. And so to use that time to be communicating with each other, taking care of ourselves, but also communicating with each other. And I think something that can help with that is learning how to listen, and also learning how to speak from your own emotional standpoint rather than criticizing what you see in the other person.
Awesome response, Sister Imani. Sister Maliha.
I would say it's important, as much as it's important to take care of, those around you, it's also really important to take care of yourself. And this is a great time to do that. It's a great time to, self-reflect. It's a great time to see where you're at with yourself and what is it that you can improve on. And not only improve on, but what is it that you need in order to move forward. Once all of this lockdown time is over, once all of this, the whole pandemic is done, once you're back to your daily routine, what is it that you'd like to see for yourself in your growth? And I think once you have that answer, then you'll be able to see what it is that your family needs and what it is that your marriage needs. A lot of the times when we get married, we always think about, him or her or us or, just, each other. We forget to think about ourselves. And this happens a lot with parents who have young kids or older kids. It happens a lot with couples who've been married for a really long time because they're in that, sync of like just doing things of how they're supposed to be done. So it's important to focus on yourself too and say, hey, this is where I am in life. How content am I with myself? What is it that I'd like to work with? What is it like that I'd like to do? Then move forward and then look at what is it your family needs? What can you do for your family? What can your family do together as a whole? And then go on from there. So create those little plans in your head for yourself and for your loved ones. So that way you have a solid way, like a solid path that you can follow as time continues.
Jazakumullah khairan to both of you. It was a great pleasure to have this conversation. And I hope that we learned two things. One is that both of you have to come back for another panel discussion on mental health. And secondly, that if any one of you in Worcester or larger New England community having any marriage issues, don't call Imam Asif or Imam Rifai. That's the husband of Sister Maliha. But you have therapists now. If you're in Massachusetts, you have Sister Imani. If you're in Connecticut, you have Sister Maliha. They are marriage therapists, Muslim marriage therapists. They know the culture, they know the religious value, and at the same time, they know what they are doing. We can only provide you a fatwa or a question or answer on religious basis. But again, please go to professional people and licensed people so they can help you appropriately, inshallah. With that, I would like to end this with dua, inshallah. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala protect all of us during this time. May Allah protect our loved one. May Allah protect our community. And may Allah bless both of you and your family to give us this time. And may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala reward all the brothers and sisters who have passed away during coronavirus with the reward of shahada as promised by Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Once again, jazakumullahu khairan and thanks. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.
Wa alaikum assalam.